Okay, let's see. Are we good to go? Okay, chat looks pretty live. That's good. We like that. Well, we'll see if anyone joins in or not, huh? Give me just a couple minutes here. See if anyone joins in or not, huh? Give me just a couple minutes here. See if anyone joins in or not, huh? Give me just a couple minutes here. About a 5-second delay. I'm showing 3 people on this side. If you are joining in, please fire a message into the chat, I appear to be running on roughly a 5-second delay. Alrighty, cool. Thank you, Derek. Welcome, welcome. Chat, if you are here, please give Derek a big round of applause. He hit 600 pounds on his axle deadlift this past week, which is just crazy. Only a few weeks after hitting 600 on a deadlift bar. I always tell people if you can hit 600, if you can hit 600 on an axle, you can hit it on pretty much any bar. So that's some phenomenal tugging strength out of Derek there. So good job, buddy. All right. Let's see here. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and dive in. May as well. So let's do it to it. Commercial gym strongman programming. First thing I want to do is I'm going to line out. Oh, thanks you, Richard. Appreciate you giving Derek his chapeau there. And again, I'm on about a 5-second delay, video versus chat. So please keep that in mind, everybody. All right, so let's talk about this. Commercial gym strongman program. What are the movements we need to look at? Well, obviously, we need some sort of squat in there. We're going to need a press, a deadlift, and then some other movements I talked about. Single leg work, row. I like chin-ups and lat pull-downs, any sort of vertical pull there, and some sort of bench variation. Really, at day's end, strongman training is general training taken to the absurd. You take the average, let's say 60-something-year-old individual, what do they need to do? We need to get them to the point where they can pick stuff up, carry it around, put it over their head. What does a strongman athlete do? They pick stupidly heavy things up, they carry it around, and they push obscene weights over their head. So that's one of the big benefits to me when it comes to strongman training, is it doesn't have as high a degree of a specificity amount versus, say, powerlifting training where it's squat, bench, deadlift, and squat, bench, deadlift, or Olympic weightlifting even more so where it's, the clean and jerk and the snatch. those sports are hyper-specific. Strongman has the luxury of being more generalized in its approach, especially since the events change from every show in general. So what that allows us to do is integrate a bit more variety, and in turn, I find Strongman has more transference to other sports as well. I mean, strong is strong. You'll get transference regardless. So with that being said, let's go ahead and lay out the skeleton of our program. We're going to go ahead and go with 9 weeks. Reason being, I just think that's a good length for a program. Obviously, we could always tailor it. Let me just get some columns in here for the various weeks. There we go. Alrighty, cool. There we go. That cleans it up. We got a little organization here. So day 1, I personally like to start my workout week with the deadlift. I find that it just sets the tone for the week. I'm feeling good physically. I'm feeling good mentally. I find my energy levels on the first day of the week, not necessarily the highest, but my technique is really solid, but I'm not as, shall I say, locked in mentally. I'm a little more low stimulus, a little more low energy, so I think the deadlift sits really well in there. Now, if you did watch, was it a video? No, it was a carousel. I did a carousel yesterday where I kind of laid out what this program is going to look like in relatively general strokes. So we're going to have our deadlift variation. Then we're going to go Zercher lunge right there. Then we have a vertical pull up. Get some leg curls in here, back extensions. And after that, top off with some deadlift stance leg press. And we can always monkey with the order a little bit here. The idea with this program, though, is we are trying to train you specifically for the sport of strongman. So then you would tailor the deadlift variation based off what you have coming up in competition or established weak links. We'd play with the exercises a little bit. Again, think of this as a live programming session. And then down the road, what will happen is I'm going to backfill in set rep schemes, probably change out a few things here and there. This is just sort of a live hangout. And guys, please ask questions as we go through. I love questions. I want this to be fun for all of us, and rather than just me talking at my laptop here. And if you see me kind of looking back and forth, it's because I've got my phone over here with the live chat. That way I can keep better track. And again, I got that 5-second delay, so please bear with me. Hopefully down the road I can figure out how to do these things so I don't have as many delays. All right, so deadlifts, Zercher lunge, pull-ups, back extensions, deadlift, stance, leg press. That looks like a good start to the week. Day 2. What I'm going to do here is I want to do my dynamic pressing day. So this is going to be push press day. Reason being, for me at least, I find that the deadlift doesn't generate much low back fatigue. So I'm going to, but I also don't want to push press the day after my squats because then my legs are going to be a little bit cooked. Then, we could probably change the program around. If you are someone who finds that the deadlift generates a lot of low back fatigue and Monday is the day that you do feel best, then we move push press before deads. The ebook will talk about that a bit more. I don't want to spend 7 hours on this live with you guys unless you really want me here. So we'll go push press. Then after that, we're going to go into a seated press of choice. Face pulls, a row, some tricep work. You'll have your day off because we don't really like to lift more than 3 days in a row, in my opinion. I find that or 2 days in a row. And generally, I like it to be 2 days of lifting, a day off, 2 days of lifting, and then the weekend off. I think that's a really good way of doing it. You shouldn't lift more than 2 days in a row, and you shouldn't have more than 2 days in a row off, in my opinion, for the best frequency and managing fatigue and recovery and all that whatnot. Let me just put that right there in the center. There we go. Kind of helps just clean things up. All right, day 3. This is going to be our leg focus day here. So we'll have a squat of choice and a good morning or RDL. Single leg work. Then after that, we'll do a lat pull down, GHR or leg curl, cable crunches. Looks good there. Alrighty. Now, day 4. One thing I like doing with a lot of strongman programs, and this is something that you'll see a lot of other coaches too. I know Cale Beck has done this. Matt Mills has done this. You have one day of your pressing be a little more dynamic, true kind of event-focused pressing. Then your second day of pressing is a little higher volume, more of kind of a bodybuilding style. And the press we're going to lead with on this day is going to be that 50 to 70 degree incline press. I really like that variation for building pressing strength in the strongman athlete. And again, if you look at the layback in the strongman press, it's going to have a lot of transference and carryover. It emulates a torso angle that you're going to see in something such as a log press, an axle push press. So, but then it's also going to help reduce low back fatigue because you are supported. Your legs are already tired from squatting yesterday. So this just helps you build more pure raw shoulder pressing power, and then you'll have the weekend off. Should just float in really nicely. So then after that, we're going to go into a horizontal press. And I'm going to kind of backfill out the movements a little more specifically. Again, without any questions or anything along the way, you're just going to see me kind of spitballing doing this in real time. So we'll just keep moving and a-grooving. There we go. Just get that off day a little bit more noted. So then after that, let's see here. We'll do some more rows. Then we're going to do shrugs for the upper back. Then a bicep, tricep, superset. All right. Let's see here. We go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movements there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movements there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movements there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movements there. And that kind of aligns with where I like to be. Generally, 5 to 6 exercises in a session is plenty in my experience. I find when you get to 7 to 8 movements, especially if you're doing 3 or 4 sets, that's a lot of volume in one day. People tend to start half-assing it after a while. You're just not going to be attacking those sets. And I think especially for the strongman athlete, we don't want you doing mindless volume. We want you being intentional and somewhat intense with all of your sets. Now that I've blocked out the general movements here, let's go a little further into which exercises we're going to use. Now, day 1, I've already kind of got lined out. Deadlift, Zercher lunge, pull-up extension. No, actually, you know what? We're going to go ahead and drop the single leg work off of squat day. Since we already have it on deadlift day, that brings that down to 5 movements, which I think will be better for a bit more recovery. You know, especially lower body day, a little less volume, in my opinion, is going to be preferable. So, deadlift, Zercher lunge, pull-up back extension, deadlift stance, leg press. Yeah, like that. Now we're putting the pull-up in after the lunges and deadlifts, just that'll help stretch out the low back, help with recovery. Back extensions are just a classic all-around movement. We're going to put the deadlift stance, leg press at the end of the workout. Reason being is you're going to be somewhat tired going into this, and I think that's beneficial. It means you're not going to have to load up as much friggin' weight on the leg press. So then you don't have to spend much time unloading plates thereafter. And even if your low back is fatigued on a leg press, it doesn't make too much of a difference because you are stable in that machine. All right, push press, seated press of choice. Let's go ahead and make this a lift formerly known as Z press. Most people, when they think Z press, it is a seated floor, it is a seated shoulder press with your feet splayed out in front of you on the floor. Zydrunas himself even said he actually didn't do that exercise, which I find hilarious, which means it just becomes a less important variable. Oh, hey, Chris, sorry, I didn't see your chat come through. Good that you could join us on the live. Welcome, welcome, Chris Godschalk. All right, so we'll just say seated, no back support, OHP. There we go. That'll be our second press there. And that'll be nice after the push press, because with any sort of push press, be it log, axle, whatever, or just a barbell in the case of our commercial gym strongman, you're going to get that arch, you're going to get that anterior pelvic tilt, which generates a lot of low back fatigue, because that's also going to help you put more pec into your press, right? You're going to be able to put more weight overhead. And in the sport of strongman, especially if at day's end it's not about style points, it's just getting the dang weight over your head. Then for the seated no back support press, I'm going to like that because that's going to help you press with a more vertical torso. You're not going to be able to arch and use your upper back and pecs as much. It's a more, shall we say, honest shoulder press, because if you try to arch and use too much, you're just going to fall over backwards. And this also will help you learn just with overhead stability, really work your midline and core. Great exercise variation there. Face pulls, can't do too many face pulls, really good for upper back and shoulder health. Then a row after that, and then tricep work. I like doing the face pulls before the rows. Reason being is I find that if I put face pulls at the end of the workout, I'm going to skip them just because I'm like, I'm tired. Whereas for whatever reason, if I see rows in my program, I'm more likely to get those done. Now with that being said, let's get a little more specific. We're going to make this a single arm row of choice since we have a bilateral row later in the week. And with any of the row movements in this, I'm going to say probably have you do these supported, be it on a machine, on a bench, rather than a freestanding bent over row. at least, that'll depend on the person, actually. I'm going to play with that. I'm going to circle back on that one because I do want some form of heavier bilateral row. Yeah, okay, you know what? That'll be day 4. I like that there because squats don't generate as much low back fatigue comparatively speaking. And even then, if we T-bar it, that'll control fatigue. Okay, so yeah, we'll leave that where it is. Single arm row, let's say a Meadows row, dumbbell row, whatever you like there, cable row. And then tricep work, we'll just pick any sort of means and methods for isolation. All right, day 3, squat of choice. We're going to go with a front or Zercher squat of your choosing. I think, your determinant there would be if you're more focused on improving leg drive for your overhead press as well as your rack position, opt for the front squat. If we're looking for improving more for loading events, front carries, as well as leg drive in the deadlift, we're going to opt for the Zercher squat. But either one's going to be a very good option for you to train with in our hypothetical program here. Good mornings or RDLs. We want a secondary hinge movement, of course. Quick shout out here. It's something I talked about in my sample outline, and that was the Zercher good morning with triple extension. So that's where you'd hold the bar in your elbows, hinge back, and as you come through, you'd extend onto your toes. That way it's almost like you're doing a jump with the bar in your elbows. That's going to have a lot of carry over to loading events. So in the program outright, I'll include a protocol for that to use the Zercher good morning to help improve loading. Otherwise, any sort of heavy hinge exercise here would be very beneficial. We could even say if you were in an off season, you might do a split stance or B stance style hinge just to take the load off of your low back and help clean up hinge mechanics in the interim, reduce overall fatigue. Lat pull down after those first 2 movements. Again, love my vertical pulls after heavy lower body work just to stretch out the low back. And we all need bigger, stronger upper backs and lats, especially in the sport of strongman. That helped us out all across the board. Then a glute ham raise or leg curl. Work the hamstrings, very important. Cable crunches, nice way to stretch out the low back as well as work the core. And that wraps up day 3. I like that. Seems pretty simple. Day 4, 50 to 70 degree incline press. With the horizontal press, let's go dips or close grip bench. Either one would be good there. I've personally found that ever since I've started doing a lot more dips, all of my presses have really benefited from it. And I think one benefit to the dip in particular is you have to hold that protracted position over top, which means your serratus anterior is going to be getting a lot of work. And the serratus is a very important shoulder stabilizer muscle. So something worth considering there. Now, if you are a bigger guy, if you can't do dips too reliably, heck, throw a slingshot on. Try that out for a little bit. Use an assistance machine, use bands. Either way, I'm very pro dip. And I can only speak to my own personal experience, but they've really helped out. Also, I got a lot of pec. Oh, thanks, Chris. Even though you can't stay long, I appreciate that you took time out of your day to be here and hang out with us. But as I was saying, too, with the dip, I've noticed, my pecs have grown quite a bit, and that gives you more purchase for the log or for the stone or for any sort of front carry, right? Bigger pecs means a more stable rack position. So I'm going to really push dips here as a secondary press, but you could also do a close grip bench, especially with an axle. But again, commercial gym strongman probably doesn't have one. Then we're going to go into our row, and on here, we're going to make this one a T-bar or bent over row. And between the two, I would strongly push towards the T-bar row. Reason being, I like that the row is in an arc. You just wedge a bar in the corner like a landmine if you have to. I found that what that does, it really lets me lock in the path, and it helps me actually target not just my lats, but also my mid and lower traps. Additionally, I can lock my low back into a flat position so I can strengthen the low back isometrically, which will carry over to my deadlift. And with our row, we're going to use a little leg drive. We're going to use a little English because we're doing this to improve the deadlift and other dimensions of the strongman. This isn't a bodybuilder style row, especially in strongman application. If we are training for a show, we want everything working together as a system. There is a time and a place for bodybuilding work. I think, especially in the off-season, strongman athletes should be trying to get more jacked. That's just a great idea. So we'll do our T-bar or bent over row, any sort of heavy bilateral row using a deadlift stance. Then let's go into some shrugs right after that. My favorite trick here too is after I do my T-bar rows, I just grab my Angles 90 grips, so those are just those longer handles, throw them over the T-bar, and then when I shrug, what happens is I can go up and back, I can get scapular retraction, really pinch my traps, and drive my elbows up and out so I get a nice little delt pump as well. Almost makes it into something kind of like a Karwoski style shrug, which is a shrug and upright row hybrid. You get a really good range of motion, but because the weight is so much lower underneath you due to the straps and the handle, it doesn't put much force on the low back, so then that sets you up for better recovery so you're not as run down. Then after the shrug, bicep, tricep, superset. Okay, cool. That looks like a really solid 9-week beginning. This is a good weekly skeleton. I think the fatigue is managed really well. And again, you could switch this out, start with push press, then go into deadlift, then do the static pressing and then the squat day after. That's one of those things where you need to exercise your own discretion and think, okay, what movements fatigue me more? Because it's not just about the fatigue generated in an individual session, but fatigue across the week. And I know for myself, if I go overhead before I deadlift, my deadlift tends to be impacted negatively by it. That's actually why I'm only doing the log once a week, because I found that, twice a week I was already generating too much fatigue and it would shoot my deadlift progression. So, if you were here the other week when I laid out my comeback program, that's one change I've made already. And that's where you're also seeing me do something. I'm actually doing a strict Viking press as my secondary press, but regardless. All right, chat, I'm going to pause for a second here. I'm going to give you all a second to catch up and ask any questions before I dive a bit into the individual days in terms of set rep progressions. So let me know. Yeah, I think the chat actually works instantaneously. It's just my video is on the 5-second delay, just as a heads up for everyone there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and carry on then. So let's discuss a little bit the individual programming days. And I am going to be running this program as a conjugate style. So day 1 with our deadlift, that is going to be a max effort type day. Day 2 with our overhead press will also be a max effort type day. Let's actually put that as a note here. You can change that out. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to stick with that. I'm not going to change that. Then days 3 and 4 are going to be more of our developmental days. This is a pretty common format you see in a lot of my programs, where what we do is I tend to swap out the dynamic effort days for more developmental days. The idea being, rather than doing speed work, we pick some other programming mean or method to elicit, whatever response or adaptation we want out of the lifter. Maybe we don't want them just lifting faster. However, speed work, again, very good for peaking for a 1-rep max, as well as managing fatigue. There's a reason why Westside uses it, as well as you see it in quite a few programs. It works. It's reliable. But I do think there's something to be said for developmental style waves, especially if we are between shows or if the show is 4 reps, et cetera, et cetera. That's one of the big things with conjugate, is understanding how to customize it to the individual and tailor it to their needs based off of the dimensions and qualities we are trying to extract from them. All right, so let's talk about our max effort deadlift training here. What I want to do with this is we're going to hit a 5 to 8 rep max, and then we're going to drop 15% for a rest pause set. This is probably a bit alien sounding for a lot of you, but here's my rationale. As I've been talking about lately, strongman as a sport is a sport of reps. The 1 rep max is important, yes, but it's not the key metric. Most of the sport is done for reps, and doing those reps in turn also helps build more muscle mass and conditioning, which has more transference to other events. You can be great at a 1 rep max deadlift, and that's all it's going to make you great at. Whereas if you're really strong in the 5 to 8 rep range, not only are you going to be stronger on the deadlift, but you'll have also built up some accompanying mass in the upper back and posterior chain as well as the grip. So that is going to help you with your carrying, loading, and front loaded carry moving events in particular. So that way we're developing multiple dimensions for the lifter to get better. I like the 5 to 8 rep max range there because if you look at a lot of strongman events, 5 to 8 reps, that's kind of where the winning rep counts tend to be at a lot of the heavier shows. Occasionally you get those freak beasts that break into double digits. Also depends on the judging, of course, but let's just say 5 to 8. I think that's a good number. Why rest pause deadlifts? The rationale here is done for time. If you look at strongman athletes do their deads, they do their deads, they'll set it down, take a few deep breaths, then start doing a few more. It's very rare you see a person just go the entire minute. It almost never happens. But conversely, I don't want it to be a situation where you do 3 reps, in let's say 20 seconds, you got 40 seconds left. You ought to be able to squeeze out 1 more, hopefully, right? So doing the rest pause style there, where you'd rep out, rest 20 seconds, rep out, rest 20 seconds, rep out 1 more time. I think that'll be really good for teaching you how to break that inertia off the floor over and over as those reset and gut out additional repetitions for the deadlift. So that's why we're going to opt for that rest pause modality there on the deadlift. I like that. Now for the Zercher lunge here, we'll probably do 2 sets of 10 in the first 3 waves, 2 sets of 8 in the next bit, and then 2 sets of 6. Use a really basic linear progression there, nothing too fancy. Now, as far as pull-up goes, we're just going to go with, so the term I'm going to use here is UM. This is usual means. So I'm going to put this in for a lot of the stuff here. UM is usual means and methods. So this is any of the progressions you've seen me post in my programs before. So it could be that 5-set rest pause. It could be 8x8. It could be myo match. It could be a top set and back off, or just a fixed amount of reps across however many sets, such as 3 sets of 8 to 12. The idea with this is with these movements here, we just want to pick progressions that you're actually going to put in the work on. Some people love rest pause. Some people just love sets across. Some people love having a big set and then 2 lighter sets thereafter. The difference between being a 600-pound deadlifter and a 700-pound deadlifter is not rest pause leg press versus myo match leg press, right? And hey, Richard, thank you so much. I'm glad you like that setup for the deads. I think it's a really good progression. To me, it makes a lot of sense. And we're actually going to be recycling that for the push press, but we're going to make a very slight change here. We're going to bring the rep count down. Reason being, upper body muscles, they are fast twitch dominant, so they fatigue a bit more quickly. And then what we're going to do as well is we're going to take a slightly bigger drop so we can get more volume on the back end, and we're going to do 2 rest pause sets. So that's how we'll change it out a little bit. Just like with the strongman athlete for reps in the press, it's the same idea, right? You need to be able to reset during the time limit in the reps event. So this will help us with that. We're also tightening the rep range a little bit, also just to help clean up technique a little bit, especially with push presses. We don't want you getting sloppy, having that bar pile drive you. But we're going to add more back off sets so we can get more volume on the other side of it, get that quasi bodybuilding approach where we're going to build a little bit more muscle mass. Guy like myself, I deadlift 610 from a deficit, but honestly, I'm not a very big dude. You can kind of finesse that with the deadlift to point. However, big pressers tend to look like big pressers, right? So that's what we'll do there. Now for the seated no back support overhead press, probably keep something really similar to what we did there, but instead of 2x10, we'll go 3x8, 3x6, 3x5. And what we'll do is just you do 2 sets of 8, and the last set is 8 or more. If you get 8 or more, you add weight the subsequent week, and then same process there with the unsupported overhead press, sets of 6, sets of 5. Oh, thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. Yeah, conjugate for powerlifting is great, but I'm going to say it, it's probably heretical. I think conjugate works even better for non-powerlifting application. I think for Gen Pop and Strongman, which is just Gen Pop taken to the most absurd of extremes, conjugate is a natural mix. And I do love it for power building as well, just for the sake of variety and keeping things fun. So let's just do that. And then as far as the last three movements, we're just going to go usual means and methods. Pick and choose whichever ones you like. I just don't think that it's one of those things where you really want to stress yourself. I like picking means and methods where I can just kind of sit down, go brain dead, and work really hard. Now, let's move into our developmental days. So this is where we're going to go a little different here. What I want to do is we're going to use density protocols here. This is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated aspects of what makes a strongman is the ability to do a large degree of work in a short amount of time. Let's say you got a minute. Next show I'm at, we have to rep out 565 after hitting, 465, 515, and then the 565 bar. So let's just do some quick math on, actually, can I do it on screen? Yeah, well, kind of. So, 465, 515, 565. Let's say you get, just 2 reps. So right there, what is that? 2,675 pounds of volume, right? So equals to 675 divided by 60. You're thinking about, what is that? 45 pounds a second. So there's a lot of density in strongman, and I think that's something that people don't think about, is just the amount of work capacity you need to get really lethal for the sport. So we're going to take that approach with density, doing more work in a similar or less amount of time, and we're going to apply that to the front or Zercher squat. And the reason why we're going to use density methods here is big, strong legs and upper back. We all need them. And I like density a lot with squats in particular because you can keep the reps lower. And on something like a front or a Zercher squat, getting much above, say 5 reps, that's extremely difficult to maintain the position and maintain your technique. Personally, I have an easier time cycling reps on the deadlift than I do the squat. So what we'll do here is we'll keep it, let's say 15-minute blocks, 15x4, 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 12x3, 12x. Actually, let's make it 15x5. And then I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second here. Because you're not going to do 15 sets of 5. Don't worry, that would be murder. Then, here we will go 9x3, 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 something like that. So the idea here is for the first 3 weeks, you're going to do however many sets of 5 in 15 minutes. Then after that, you'll do however many sets of 4 in 12 minutes. And after the last 3 waves, however many sets of 3 in 9 minutes. You're not doing these every minute on the minute. And much like I did in the conjugate calisthenics program, I think what I want to do here is have it set where after a certain amount of sets, you can increase the load for that given workout. But next week's workout, you stay at the same intensity scale. And let's go ahead. Let's just do some quick. Let's say you can squat 405. We'll set the training max to 365 right there. And generally, I don't like to get much above 85%, or in this case, it'd be 75%, just like that. Okay, cool. So yeah, 9 minutes of max triples at 310. You'd probably just load that to 315. Let's say you went 80, 75, 70, 65, 60. 55. Yeah, that gets a little too light, so we wouldn't take that even of jumps. Maybe if we did 3%, 82, 79, 76, 73. I'm liking this more already. 70, 67, 64, 61. Now these would actually subtract 1%, 10% from these, so it'd actually be 51% right there, which That is pretty light to start off, but I don't think that's a bad idea because it lets you get used to the workload. And if you look at a lot of conjugate guys when they program speed work, even if they're not using bands, they tend to keep it around 50 to 60%. While this isn't speed work, it is kind of our analog, so we can take some reference point from there. 15 minutes of max fives at 51% of your thing. Let's say you get 10 sets in, that's 50 reps at 50%. That's a good bit of volume. So yeah, I'm going to stick with that. That looks really good overall. We'll just keep those percentages there. I can always kind of backfill those numbers. All right, now the good morning or RDL here. We're going to do one heavy top set of 5 to 8s. And then one back off set of 10 to 12. And we'll just kind of hammer away at that progression for a few weeks at it, for 9 weeks at a time. Keep it really simple there. Nothing too fancy. I think that's really the way to go. And as far as the density progression goes, we're actually going to go ahead and recycle that because I did want to do something very similar with the upper body press, with our static press, right? So we're just going to go ahead, carry this through right here. Bada bing, bada boom. And I might actually reduce. Do I want to reduce the timer? Let's see here. So if we went 12, 10, 8, yeah, I like that. The reason why I think we can actually cut the timer a little bit here is, again, because upper body muscles are fast twitch dominant. They fatigue more rapidly. I think we can just tighten up our time constraint there because fast twitch muscles also tend to recover from efforts a little bit faster with rest. And then the other side benefit of that is people just tend to work faster on upper body because it's not as systemically fatiguing, right? You do some push-ups, it doesn't wind you as much as doing a bunch of body weight squats, for example, because it's a relatively shorter range of motion, unless, of course, you're built like me, in which case I'm actually certain that my pressing ROM is longer. I know my pressing ROM is longer than my deadlift ROM, but squatting ROM might be similar. Anyways, so we'll take a similar density protocol, just with a little bit less time there. Now for our dip or close grip bench, we're actually going to do 2 top sets. We're going to do a heavy 5, then a heavy 8, then the back off set of 10 to 12. I posted about this a little bit a while ago as kind of the Chris Bumstead inspired circa max effort method, and I think this will actually slot in really nicely here. Reason being is it gives you something heavy to play with after your density work, but it's also going to force you to be humble a little bit. And at day's end, this press is subservient to our strongman press, so we don't necessarily need to be setting PRs on it week in and week out, but this will force us to work hard on it, get a good pump, and if you don't progress every week, that's going to be okay. Progress is only linear in the long term, assuming you're on good programs, but day-to-day fluctuations. As far as our accessory movements go, we're just going to use the typical usual means and methods. Okay, so let's go over the week now that I've played with it a little bit. Day 1, your max effort deadlift. You'll work up to a heavy set of 5 to 8, then drop 15% for a rest pause set. Zercher lunges will be 2 sets of 6 to 10, depending on where you're at in the 9-week cycle. Pull-ups, back extensions, and a deadlift stance leg press. Day 2, our max effort press. You're going to do a push press variation of choice. It could be a barbell push press. You could even do something like a paused dip barbell push press, a paused catch barbell push press, a push jerk, a split jerk. I'm going to play with that some more. Got some other ideas. Then we'll do a seated no back support overhead press for 3 sets of 5 to 8, depending on where you're at in the training wave. Face pulls, single arm rows, and a tricep work. Off day, a front or Zercher squat of your choosing, done with a density wave. Then a heavy set of 5 to 8, and then a back off set of 10 to 12 on a good morning or RDL. Usual means and methods accessory work for lat pull downs, glute ham raises, or leg curls, and then cable crunches. And then our 4th day will be density work for our press. Then we will do a 2 heavy top set supplemental press, a set of 5, second set is somewhere between 5 and 8, Third set is between 10 and 12. You drop weight between the first two sets and the third set, obviously. Idea there being the second set is your progression indicator. When it hits 8 reps, you make sets 1 and 2 heavier, as well as set number 3. Then a T-bar or bent over row of your choosing, a shrug, and then a bicep tricep superset. Now, something we could consider doing as well, chat, is we could actually move the push press into the density block and then have the 50 to 70 degree incline press be one of our max effort variations. If we are going to go that route, I think what I would do then is I would move, push press the day after squats. I don't love that personally, but then again, because it isn't as high of an intensity training weight, you should be all right. And there's something to be said for learning technique under a little fatigue. Otherwise, you could switch your days around, do your heavy strict press and then all that, then deadlift, then have your days off. Then you could have your push press density workout and then your squat workout thereafter. I'm going to play with that because I can actually see it both ways. I think both options are really good. Maybe if you were getting ready for a show, I think actually maybe you could just say it depends. If you're needing to build more overall upper body muscle mass, stick with the incline press as your density movement. But if you are needing to really refine your technique with the push press, make that your density movement. That way you can build the strength skill. Because again, that's what developmental waves are for, is extracting and building certain qualities. So if you need more muscle mass, make the density wave focus on the incline. If you need more technique with the push press, make the density wave your push press. And then you can make the max effort your strict, or you could do push twice a week. I think especially if you are a lighter athlete, or a lot of the women I work with, push pressing twice a week is definitely a highly viable option. But aside from that, I look at this, I feel pretty good about it. That all makes sense to me looking it over. It's very economical. We control fatigue across the week. We train just a bit of everything. I'm going to pause now. Let's see if chat needs to catch up. All right, looks like everyone's pretty well caught up then. If y'all don't have any questions for me, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up here. I'll give you just another minute or so to catch up. But aside from that, I'd say this looks pretty good. Obviously, I need to monkey with the percentages a little bit, figure out if there's any last minute changes I want to make, little notes. Like I know with the Zercher lunge, something I'm going to advocate for is doing that walking with a short stride. We might even do a longer field for the Zercher lunge. Okay, let's see. No questions between this. Home gym leg press substitution. Now, it really depends on what you have available to do for your home gym leg press substitution. The first one that comes to mind is going to be the classic goblet squat. You really can't go wrong with that, especially narrow stance, heels up. Adding in something like a 1.5 rep down, halfway up, back down, all the way up, that's going to help increase demand on the quads. If you can't chase overload just through loading, or if you find that your upper back or low back is being compromised by super heavy goblet squats, narrow stance, heels elevated, trap bar deads are going to be good. Narrow stance, heels elevated, just holding dumbbells on each side. I think it's called a dumbbell suitcase squat. That would be good. And then mixing in stuff like pauses, partial reps, 1.5 reps with that. We'll have a lot of transference. Depending on how well stocked your garage gym is. The Hatfield squat's going to be great, where you have the squat bar on your upper back, right? The safety squat bar. And then you just hold onto the rack and do it that way. That's kind of the garage gym leg press. That'd be the best bet. Aside from that, I'd say just do more lunges. That's always a viable option. Something I've done with people in the past is if I have them doing goblet squats, I have them hold the bottom of the rep for 10 seconds before beginning their sets. In a situation like this, necessity is the mother of invention. What we need to do are find means and methods to increase the fatigue and strain on the quadriceps, since we can't just chase pure overload via weight. So that's going to come from tempo manipulation and rep, range of motion manipulation, if that makes sense, Mr. Richard. Do we have any other questions out there? And Richard, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. I think, yeah, your last name looks familiar, so I'm pretty sure we're on IG together. But just DM me there too. I can help you out a little bit. Send me your gym inventory, and we'll figure out some strategies. Alrighty, chat. I think that's gonna wrap it up today. Quicker one than usual, but this was fun. I appreciate you all taking time out of your day to come hang out with me. Really appreciate you folks. You have a wonderful rest of your day today, right? Bye for now.